In 2009, the average price of a New York City taxi medallion, the physical license to operate a single cab, was over $700,000. By 2017, that value had plummeted by 80%. This wasn't a recession. It was an extinction-level event. An entire industry, built over a century on metal plates and street corners, was being dismantled. Not by a rival taxi company with a bigger fleet, but by a simple smartphone app that didn't own a single car. The taxi industry saw Uber as a competitor. They were wrong. Uber wasn't playing the same game. It was playing a different one entirely. Uber launched in 2009, initially as a high-end black car service called UberCab. The idea was simple: push a button, get a ride. But behind this simplicity was a revolutionary business model. A model that allowed it to become the fastest-growing startup in history, achieving a $60 billion valuation in just 6 years. Traditional taxi companies were baffled. They had the cars. They had the drivers. They had the licenses and the political connections. Uber had an app. So how did a technology company from San Francisco manage to systematically conquer city after city, overthrowing a global industry that had stood for 100 years? That is the question we are answering today. The answer isn't just about software. It's about a fundamental shift in how value is created. It's about the power of the platform. To understand Uber's victory, we need to break down the 4 pillars of its platform strategy. It begins with solving a problem that has plagued markets for centuries. Every transaction-based business faces a classic chicken and egg problem. To attract buyers, you need sellers. But to attract sellers, you need buyers. For the taxi industry, this meant you needed passengers to attract drivers, and drivers to attract passengers. For decades, taxi companies solved this with brute force. They put cars on the street and hoped for the best. Dispatchers would radio drivers, who would aimlessly circle busy areas. This system was incredibly inefficient. Drivers spent a huge portion of their time and fuel searching for a fare. Passengers, meanwhile, had no idea when, or if, a cab would appear. Uber's founders, Travis Kalanick and Garrett Camp, didn't see this as a logistics problem. They saw it as an information problem. The issue wasn't a lack of cars or riders. It was that they couldn't find each other efficiently. The Uber app solved this. It created a single, centralized marketplace. For riders, the app showed available cars in real time. The uncertainty was gone. For drivers, the app showed a heat map of demand, sending them exactly where the riders were. The wasted time was eliminated. But launching this two-sided market is brutally difficult. Uber overcame this with an aggressive, city-by-city launch strategy. They would focus intensely on one area, often during a major event like a tech conference, and heavily subsidize the first rides. They gave new users free ride credits and offered drivers guaranteed hourly rates, even if they had no passengers. They burned cash to manufacture both supply and demand simultaneously, just long enough for the network to become self-sustaining. Once enough riders and drivers were on the platform, a powerful flywheel effect kicked in. More riders attracted more drivers. More drivers meant lower wait times, which attracted even more riders. The platform had reached critical mass. The second pillar was a radical departure from traditional business. Uber chose not to own the most expensive part of its service, the cars. A traditional taxi company is asset-heavy. It has to buy, maintain, and insure a fleet of vehicles. It has to pay for a garage, dispatchers, and administrative staff. And in many cities, it had to buy those million-dollar medallions. This massive capital investment makes it slow and expensive to scale. To add 10% more capacity, you had to buy 10% more cars. Uber sidestepped this entirely. Its model was asset-light. Drivers used their own cars, paid for their own gas, and handled their own maintenance. Uber wasn't a transportation company. It was a software company that connected people who needed a ride with people who had a car. This was its strategic genius. While a taxi company in San Francisco was worrying about fleet maintenance, Uber was using its capital to launch in Paris. While a cab operator in New York was financing a new vehicle, Uber was subsidizing rides in Mumbai. Being asset-light gave Uber unprecedented speed and scalability. It could enter a new market with minimal upfront investment. Its only real cost was marketing and software development. This allowed it to expand globally at a rate that was simply impossible for its asset-heavy competitors. They weren't just outmaneuvered, they were facing a business model that operated on a completely different set of economic rules. For 100 years, the process of taking a taxi was filled with friction. First, you had to find one. You'd stand on a street corner, waving your arm, hoping a car was available. Then, you had to tell the driver where you were going, hoping they knew the best route. At the end of the ride, you fumbled for cash or a credit card. And you never knew the price until the meter stopped. Uber systematically identified and eliminated every single one of these friction points. Hailing was replaced with a single tap on a screen. Uncertainty was replaced with a real-time map showing your car's approach. Directions were replaced with GPS navigation, optimized for traffic. Payment was replaced with a seamless, automatic transaction tied to your account. Pricing was replaced with an upfront estimate, removing the anxiety of the ticking meter. This frictionless experience was revolutionary. It created a service that wasn't just slightly better than a taxi, it was fundamentally different. But the real power was what happened behind the scenes. Every trip, every rating, and every route generated a tsunami of data. This data became the fuel for a powerful feedback loop. It allowed Uber to develop sophisticated algorithms for dynamic pricing, known as surge pricing. While controversial, surge pricing was a brutally effective tool for managing supply and demand. When demand spiked, higher prices incentivized more drivers to get on the road, increasing supply right when it was needed most. The data also improved the core service. It predicted traffic, calculated more accurate eaters, and optimized driver placement before demand even appeared. The more people used Uber, the smarter the system became. The smarter the system became, the better the service, attracting even more users. This is the data network effect. Uber's final pillar was its philosophy of growth at all costs, a concept known as Blitzscaling. The taxi industry was protected by a wall of regulations. Medallion systems, fare rules, and licensing requirements were designed to limit competition and maintain the status quo. A traditional company would spend years lobbying for permission to operate. Uber didn't ask for permission. It asked for forgiveness. Its strategy was to launch in a city, often in a legal gray area, and grow its user base as fast as possible. They knew that once millions of citizens relied on the service, it would be politically impossible for local governments to shut it down. They turned their riders and drivers into a powerful lobbying force. The mantra was simple: grow so fast that you become too big to ban. This approach was aggressive and controversial. It led to legal battles, protests from taxi drivers, and accusations of predatory practices. But it was undeniably effective. Uber treated regulation not as a barrier, but as a marketing opportunity. Every fight with a city hall generated headlines, giving them free publicity and cementing their image as a disruptive innovator fighting against an entrenched monopoly. While their competitors were fighting on paper, Uber was winning on the streets. So, how did Uber truly dismantle a century-old industry? It wasn't just the app. It wasn't just the data. It wasn't just the aggressive growth. These were all symptoms of a much deeper strategic insight. Here it is: Uber understood that it wasn't a taxi company. It was a marketplace. A traditional business creates value by producing a good or a service. A taxi company produces rides. It owns the assets and employs the labor to deliver that service. Its success is linear. To double its revenue, it has to roughly double its costs. A platform business doesn't produce a service. It facilitates a connection. Uber doesn't provide rides, it connects drivers who can offer a ride with people who need one. Its primary asset isn't a fleet of cars. It's the network of users itself. This is the fundamental aha moment. The taxi industry was competing against Uber's features, the app, the GPS, the cashless payments. But they failed to realize they were fighting a completely different business model. They were trying to build a better horse-drawn carriage while Uber was building the railroad. The value wasn't in the individual cars, it was in the power and efficiency of the network that connected them all. If you've just had your own aha moment about platform strategy, help our channel grow its own network by hitting the like button and subscribing for more breakdowns. Your support helps us unlock these secrets. The brilliance of Uber's platform strategy is its universality. It's a blueprint for disruption. Look at the biggest companies of the last 2 decades. Airbnb doesn't own hotels. YouTube doesn't create its own videos. Amazon's marketplace doesn't own most of the inventory it sells. They are all platform businesses. They connect producers with consumers, creating enormous value by reducing friction and leveraging network effects. The core lesson from Uber's takeover is this: the most powerful position in a modern economy is not to be the provider of a service, but to be the owner of the network that controls the service. Don't build a better taxi. Build a better marketplace for transportation. This principle is what separates the disruptors from the disrupted. It's the difference between linear growth and exponential scale. It's the secret to how a simple app toppled a global industry. If you learned something new, hit the like button and subscribe for more strategy breakdowns. And let us know in the comments, what company's strategy should we unlock next?